Hello everyone, Saravia here with the third video in the series explaining how I use Illuminate as a CTE teacher. In this case, this video is going to be very similar to the last video that I did concerning rubrics. In the last video, I explained how I set up a rubric in Illuminate and how that allowed me to grade really complex projects while giving students like really specific feedback, but automating it in a way that's efficient for me and helpful for the students. In this case, what I want to go over is kind of the same thing. It's the same process, but the difference is that in this case, the students will be the ones actually filling out the rubric. So this is something that I do when I want the students to sort of reflect a little bit before they turn in an assignment. And so what I do is I can use a rubric that I've already established. As you can see, here is a rubric for a television project that I have the students do when they first come into the DMA2 class. And it's a very simple rubric. It basically has 5 categories or 5 rows, and then I can grade the students, or the students can grade themselves from 0 to 5, right? So as an example, a student would create their own video, and then they would go and fill out this rubric themselves through Illuminate, and they would consider each category and compare that category to their video, right? So for example, I don't know, like row 3, right? Does the video show good lighting, avoids backlit scenes, and there are no windows in the background, right? And so a student would be able to look at their video and consider that that category and kind of self-reflect and grade themselves on a scale of 1 to 5, right? If they indeed have really good lighting from the front and there's no light, heavy light behind them, and if there are no windows in the background, then the student would obviously grade themselves a 5. But the idea behind this rubric is for the students to really self-reflect, right? For them to use this as a way to consider their project before they turn it in, right? And what this helps with is it helps with there being no surprises, right? It used to happen before I did this that I would grade a student's work, and inevitably the student would always come and ask me, Saravia, why did I get this grade? Why was my grade low? Why is my grade not an A? But if I do this, I can kind of attack the most sort of common I would say errors, or the most common things that students have trouble with, right? And this allows me to make something very concrete that they can look at and really like it allows them to reflect on it. That's the big thing. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this as a template, right? So this is a file that I would give the students. What I'm going to do is I am going to download this as a PDF. Right? In order for it to work in Illuminate, it just has to be a PDF, and so we're going to call this the television rubric. Save it on my computer right there. And this is something that you can do for a lot of different projects. I tend to do it with projects in which it's very important for me to give the students feedback, and especially when I want them to understand or apply really specific technical requirements. And so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go over to Illuminate. I log in to Illuminate through my portal. And once I'm here, I'm going to go to Assessments, and I am going to create an assessment. Okay, and the assessment type that I want is a flexible assessment. And so we're going to call this television reflection rubric, or television project reflection rubric. And what I want to do is, just like in my last video, instead of a multiple choice question, I am going to switch this to a multiple choice advanced, right? And I'm going to add 1. Okay, so now that I'm here, I want to make sure that I switch this from a scale of A, B, C, D, E to a user created choice, right? And if I go back to my rubric, I can see that I have a scale from 0 to 5, and so I want that to be reflected here. I'm going to type in 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I forgot. No, you have to start at 0. 1, 2, 3, out of 4, out of 5. Perfect. And hit the check mark. And once you see the saved, you can close this. Before I do anything else though, I am going to upload my material. So I am going to either drag a file here or upload from my computer. And it's going to be the Television rubric. Alrighty, and as soon as you see it here, you can view it, you can download it, you can trash it. So I can close this out. Now I can see that I have the material. So the first thing I want to do is I want to set this question for a rubric answer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 6 alternatives. Oh, before I do that, I need to switch this to the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 scale, right? And then add my alternatives. And the reason I want to add alternatives is because I want to make sure that I highlight the different options, and then I want to assign a grade to each option, right? So 0 gives us a 0, this gives us a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, and a 5. What this allows me to do is it allows me to, when the student selects one of these numbers, it automatically corresponds to the grade itself, right? This is how you do a rubric. What I want to do after this is I just want to duplicate this a few times. So I'm going to duplicate it 5 times because my rubric has 5 different categories or 5 different bands, 5 different questions. Yes, I'm sure. So that's question 2. Duplicate again. Question 4 and question 5. Okay. You can always change the label, right? We can call this R1, right, for rubric 1. Let's call this R2. So instead of rubric, we have R. Rubric 3, rubric 4, rubric 5. If I wanted to, I could add standards to this. And again, you can link the standards from your specific class. I'm just going to very quickly kind of add some of the standards that are already there. Obviously, I would do this with a lot more care if this was an actual kind of assignment that I wanted to give the students. And that's pretty much it, right? I have the title. If I want to add a description, I can explain what I want the students to do. So, you know, consider the rubric something like that, right? And so I have my title, I have my description, I have my 5 rubric questions, I have them linked to a standard, and I have the material attached. What I'm going to do is I'm going to preview this to see what the student would see. And I can click on this little icon up here. And so this is what the student would see, right? 5 questions. They would begin the test, quote unquote. And this is what they would do. They would consider each row, and then they would grade themselves on a scale from 0 to 5, right? And so if a student submitted on time and the video is visible on YouTube as an unlisted link, perfect, choose 5, right? The student would think, do I speak in a clear voice with an engaging demeanor, and most errors or pauses are edited out? Maybe I didn't do as well on that one, and so on and so forth, right? The student would go through and kind of grade themselves on each one of the row categories, and then they would just review and finish, right? Great. If I am satisfied with this, I'm going to click on Done. Right, and so my assessment is now ready, and I can move on to administer from this screen. If you ever click away from this screen, like let's say you go to something else or you prepare this a week in advance, you can always access that same screen by going to Assessments, View Assessments, and then here is my assessment, right? Television Project Reflection Rubric. I'm going to click on that. And now we're back to that screen, right? And from here, I can click on Administer, or I can click on Line. So I'm going to go to Administer. I'm going to have the students do this online. You can also print answer sheets if you wanted to. So that's really easy. You can print an answer sheet, and then after the students fill them out, you get them back and you can actually scan them with your webcam. It's a really easy process. But for this, I'm going to just do an online testing. I want the kids to access this whenever they get a chance to, so I would make this a little bit open-ended. I'm going to test with quick code, right? And once the quick code is generated, you see this little saving thing. Once it says complete, then I can copy the URL for the access code and then post it on the Google Classroom for the students to access. Right? I'm not going to show that right now, but basically I want the students to be able to access this whenever. So in order to make sure that this particular quiz doesn't log out, I'm going to go to Edit, and I can change the testing window, right? And so maybe I want to give the students, I don't know, a good week to complete this. So the test is going to be active from the 22nd to the 26th, and you know, I can do 7:15 a.m. to, I don't know, 12 or 11:59 p.m. right, from Monday to Friday, and I save that. And so that way a student can access this whenever they are ready to grade or reflect on their own project. And like I said, you click on that little link and you just post this on the Google Classroom, right? You can post it along with their project or as an assignment by itself. And so the kids will be able to go in, they'll look at the rubric, they'll be able to reflect on their own project, and they'll submit it. Now, what's really interesting about this is once the students submit their projects, right? I also use that as kind of like a grading method, right? So what happens is after they submit their project, I can always go into the test itself and I can input or change their grade if I agree or disagree, right? So let me show you what that looks like. If I go to Assessments and I go to View Assessments, right? And I'm assuming that at this point the students have already taken the rubric and filled it out. I'm going to go to this same window here for the Administer. If I click on Administer, instead of online testing, now I can go to Enter Edit, right? And so if I go to Enter Edit, I can filter for the class that I want to look up the scores for, click on Find Students, and see in this case it's all blank because I have had no students take this self-assessment. But once the students do their self-assessment, you basically would have this grid populated. And then you can use that as a basis to go in and change the value of the category. If you think they did really good and they graded themselves a little lower, you can bump it up a little higher. If they graded themselves a 5 for everything and they didn't do half the work, then obviously you can adjust that. And so you'd be able to input your own numbers here. And the advantage to that is that you get kind of like this feedback loop, right? The students go in and do a self-assessment, and then you go in after and you adjust that self-assessment according to your own standards. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about how to see the self-assessments and how to translate that to a grade. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go to Assessments and View Assessments, right? This is my entire list of assessments here. Now, if I were to click on the Television Project Reflection rubric, let me just click on that to show you what that looks like. Basically, there's no information yet because no students have taken that self-assessment, right? But if a student had taken, or like if a group of students had taken self-assessment, so for example, let's look at my 2023, no, not that one. Let's look at my DMA camera settings quiz, right? This is a quiz that some of my students took already. When they go in and they take a self-assessment, whether it's a quiz or a rubric, you get this page with all of these performance bands, right? And you can set the performance bands to whatever you want. If you want to see the actual final grades, you click on Matrix, right? And then from here, you can filter by course, by class, or even by a particular student. I'm just going to click on View in Browser, and Illuminate will just generate a report of every single student who has taken that particular assessment, right? So if I scroll down, you can see here's the student's name, their 99 number, and their final score, right? Obviously, this is not the rubric, right? This is just an example because this is a quiz that they did take. But seeing quiz results and seeing rubric results is basically in the same place, right? You go to the assessments once the student takes the quiz, and then you come and look at the matrix report. From here, you can actually go back to the assessment, right? And if you click on Administer, you can actually push this assessment to Synergy in order to copy the grades over. So I hope that was helpful. Basically what I showed you was how you can use Illuminate to create kind of self-assessments for students in which they compare a rubric to their own project. And it's just a really quick and easy way for students to kind of reflect a little bit about their own work, and it saves you a little bit of time in having to sort of grade everybody's work and in trying to explain to students very particular details or very particular feedback about their stuff. It just makes this a lot more efficient. I hope that was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video.